You have to open that.
I do, really?
Yeah, right now.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It's got my name on it, too.
Yeah.
I forgive you, your friend Gordo. Tim Sika. Oh.
Well, you have to turn it around so they
No,
can see it.
what?
Yeah. See? See, that was good, right?
That's fucking creepy. This is my old high school, which is now...
Which burned down, by the way. It's gone.
It's gone. This is fucking creepy, guys. Okay, wow. I'm triply creeped out. I have to tell you about the trailer for the film. It gives a certain impression. I mean, I expected to be sort of like on the edge of my seat for this movie, and I was struck and surprised and kind of edified because I see a lot of movies. What a rich or a thematically rich, intelligent, provocative, thematically meaty genre piece this was.
Right.
You said, I think, in an interview, you said that the film began for you in the writing of it with a simple premise. And what was that premise?
I got this idea in my head about making a movie that somewhat touched on the idea of bullying, but it was about a person running into their bully 20 so years after high school, and I immediately when I had that idea, it started to be very exciting to me, and I felt like it was a good starting point to make a movie of.
Were you? I'm going to ask. Just come right out and ask this. Were you exercising any of your own demons from the past when you wrote this?
It's funny. I've written a few movies, and they all seem to be roughly about the same thing, about a guy doing a bad thing and getting in trouble, and his whole life falling apart as a result of it. So maybe I'm trying to exercise something from past life. But as far as there we go.
Thank you.
As far as the roles we play in high school, which is a lot of what this movie is about. I was on both sides of the fence. I was a bit of a Simon earlier on in my what I call the primary school days, which is before you get to high school. Part of that pack mentality of being mean to other kids, which I'm not very proud of. But also feeling later in high school what it was like to be kind of dominated and really truly frightened by some of the bigger, older kids.
Can you talk about, this is your first time at bat, feature film directing. You've directed some shorts and stuff, but can you talk about, you're probably going to be asked this a lot on the tour, but can you talk about juggling those, the disciplines of writing, being on the set, directing your own performance, having to oversee the whole piece as a director, but the pleasures and the perils of that, of being on set and directing actors and directing yourself?
Well, I've been around so many sets as an actor and sat in from a different point of view. So I knew a lot, or thought I knew a lot, and then yet there was so much more to learn throughout the process. The writing was kind of squared away to a degree, even though the writing kept going through the shoot and even in the edit process. But for the most part, that part of the process was over the last few years. And then once I'd met Jason and we were very serious about making the movie, I surrounded myself with a really solid team of heads of department that I knew would steer the ship in the right direction with me, and so that I could really focus on directing the movie. Now the real problem was I still was holding on to this idea of playing Gordo. I thought about casting somebody else, but as I got closer to the movie, I figured with 6 or so days in front of the camera, it was manageable. And I had a brother, I have a brother, Nash, who's a really great director, right. And we had him on set as a creative sort of eye for me when I was in front of the camera. So I could literally finish a take and look at him and go, "Are we okay? Do we want to go again? Is there anything else we should try?" So that I wouldn't waste time by looking at the monitor, which is a massive time soak in a movie. When actors finish a take and they want to go and have a look at themselves, and
I got to tell you, seriously, I'm not here. This is totally fucking freaking
We
me
freaked you out.
Seriously, I hated high school. It was the really interesting thing about this. I don't want to bore anybody with this, but I deliberately stayed away from high school after I left. I never kept in touch. They were always trying to keep in touch with me, and no matter where I lived, they always seemed to manage where I was because they would always send me mailings and stuff. And I thought, I would get these things about reunions. People say, "Oh yeah, remember, we were best friends," and it's like, no, we weren't. I hated the school. This is I feel.
But the high school's gone. They still try and get in touch. What do they want now?
No.
Now it's done.
No, it's not. Did they raise it?
It's gone.
Yeah,
I think it burned down.
It was an all boys sort of like an academy, like Bellarmine School. It was that kind of thing. It was an all boys, and then they were having problems, so they went co-ed. But this was way after I left, and they
thought by bringing girls that it was going to make
everything
things better.
I was planning on doing with this whole thing.
That was our
to
plan.
say. Let's open it up. Really, let's open it up, and I'm going to run the mic. So
I enjoyed the movie, first of all.
Thank you.
You had a really good American accent during this movie and some of the other movies I've seen you in. And I'm just wondering, is that something you've been practicing your whole life or sort of developed over the years?
Australian TV when I was growing up was, this is going to show my age as well, Brady Bunch, Happy Days, Eight is Enough, Gilligan's Island, you name it. It was all American TV. And I truly believe a lot of Australian actors have a good ear for the American accent because we are constantly watching American TV and American movies. So I think we're used to hearing that more than if you guys were suddenly forced to have to do an Australian accent, which is hard enough for an Australian to do.
Well, you pulled it off very well. Philip Sadiq here. Question. The house was actually, how did you create the house as being a character?
I had initially written the house as a more cookie cutter sort of house. When we went on location scouts, again with my heads of department, I wanted to satisfy them and wanted them to be a part of the process. And Richard Sherman, who's our wonderful designer who had designed, rich kind of independent movies like Of Gods and Monsters and also the Twilight movies or two of the Twilight movies. He started to show me more mid-century modern houses, and it reminded me suddenly of a house I'd grown up in that I used to be terrified living in at night time because during the day it was beautiful to live in, you could see great views and everything, but at night time it was like a fishbowl. And if the lights were on, at a young age I realized that if there were people stalking, and when you're a kid, there's always more people stalking than are really out there. I always felt like they could see me, but I couldn't see them. So we want to start with a house that felt like idyllic and aspirational, that could then also be a terrible place to be, not just in the night time, but the great challenge for us was to make that house feel uncomfortable for Robin during the day.
Hey, Marcus Osborne here. What point during the editing process, you guys were sitting there, you put this film together, obviously you expected it to be good, but I'm assuming that at some point during the process where you were putting it together, you went, this is going to be good. What scene was that and why?
I had that feeling on set once when I was watching Jason and Rebecca tear each other apart in the kitchen. There are a couple of moments where I just truly felt really honoured to be doing what I was doing in that moment, that I had this amazing team around me making this movie. And I remember thinking this, I've been on a lot of movie sets and this is one of the greatest days I've ever had at work. And then as the movie evolved, there were moments where you start losing your objectivity and subjectivity completely ebbs in and takes over. And by the end of the process, I was sitting there going, all I'm doing right now is I watch the movie like at least once a day as we were finishing the edit, and just write down moments where I felt like anything was false, like a line of dialogue felt false, where a moment felt forced, where I felt embarrassed or cringing as a filmmaker. And thankfully, as we got further and further into that process, I felt there were very few of those moments. And I could try and retain some of my objectivity, but I felt like that work, thankfully, was done by being very careful about how I wrote the film early on. And my least favourite part of the process is rewriting, but it's so essential. and just looking at that thing from every angle, especially this kind of a movie, which is carefully plotted and important to tether plot to character and make sure that every moment is resonating with character as much as it is with a cool story, I guess.
So first I wanted to thank you. I've known Tim for 5 years. I've never seen him freaked out like that before. Hilarious. Secondly, your accent, that's what's blowing my mind. To hear you, I can't believe you really are Australian. You're not faking us out.
No, I'm not researching my next job or anything. No, I'm Australian. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And finally, that film was the most terrifying film I think I've ever seen in the club. I mean, you built suspense so strong from the very beginning that I was leaning towards my niece like this the whole time. Every turn of her head, every time the curtain shut, every time a door opened.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you. And look, the intention also was to create that feeling without spilling too much blood and trying to elongate that tension. And I really have a lot to thank of the movies I used to love watching in the 80s for setting up that feeling that, when the dog goes missing, you expect that the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to come back in pieces. And those movies really set us up for that feeling like bad stuff is going to happen. And of course it does. But the more that I felt like Gordo could recede into the background, A, I could get on with my job as a director, but B, it would help us create that mystery and that suspense of what could happen rather than what is happening.
The choice of Jason Bateman, comedic actor, kind of coming into this more suspenseful role, was that kind of just when you saw him, he was the best guy, or did you have somebody with that type of background in mind?
It was supposed to be a comedy. Jason just wasn't on his game. In fact, he threw a little bit of comedy in there, and there's a good, nice warmth and kind of, little asides in there, particularly when he's making fun of me in the house, when I've gone outside. And, I often think, and I know Jason agreed with me when we first started talking about the movie, is that, if you can get a comic actor to take a serious turn, it's so fantastic, and they're so good at it, more so than dramatic, typically dramatic actors are at suddenly going, I'm going to put on a funny nose and be funny. And he just did it so well. There was already evidence in movies like Disconnect and State of Play that Jason was a very well-rounded actor with a lot of skills.
He's being so... I did not want to cast Jason.
You didn't?
Remember? No, it was Adam and you.
Oh.
Yeah. I was totally wrong. And I was you. I was like, he's a comic actor. If you have Jason Bateman in your movie, people are going to think it's a funny movie. It's going to be hard to market. All the things that a dumb producer says. And I was totally wrong. But that was, you don't remember that? Are you being nice, or he's just being nice?
No, I have a short-term memory loss problem. But to your credit, I'll pay, this is the last compliment I'm going to play. If you swat this one down, it's over. That Jason was willing to, after he read the script, was willing to kind of trust me. And the way Jason runs Blumhouse and stayed true to it all the way through to the end, although I didn't necessarily fully believe you in the beginning, was he said, I'm going to let you make the movie that you want to make, and I'll give you my opinion every step of the way, but I won't force you to do anything that you don't want to do. And that's the way that they run things there. He says, if you follow what you want to do, and inevitably the movie doesn't end up getting a release because of that, then that's up to you. And always offered his opinion, but stayed true to the very end to let me make the movie they wanted to make. So
you did a good job at playing a kind of creepy background kind of guy. You stayed to that point where you were you weren't really likable, but you were really creepy. Such different from Dark 30, but the Alfred Hitchcock kind of thing. The audience screamed over opening a box before they went over the shower scene, which were both of them great to see. A simple thing like the noise of opening a box, half the people jumped out of their seats.
I'm very happy to hear that. I never really took delight in other people's sort of torture, but In the movie context, I'm happy to hear that. You know, we work very carefully in those scenes, like when the dog returns and when Rebecca's in the shower and she has that dream, I guess. And
Thank you for not killing the dog, by the way.
well, yes, I killed a dog in the first movie I wrote, and it didn't go down so very well. I've learned my lesson. I love dogs too, so. Yeah, we were carefully crafting that and taking the noise out of it to really get that full effect. And in that vein, I really give a shout out to my editor, Luke Doolan, who I've known for years, worked with for years, who cut a movie I was in called Animal Kingdom and cut the movie where I killed the dog called The Square, who was such a great partner through the post-process and such great taste in the way we put the movie together. And his advice was very special to me.
I'd like to segue on what the lady below me said about suspense, because it just built and built and built in me as you went through it. And to me, the best compliment that I could pay you is it reminded me of Hitchcock, because that's what Hitchcock did to me. and it was breathtaking to me to experience that with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jason, as producer, were you ever concerned that maybe Joel was like burning the candle at both ends? Because, you know, I mean, you're responsible for the production and all.
Yeah, we don't never work with first-time directors, but we're very reluctant to do it. But the fact that he'd spent so much time on sets convinced us. And then he talked really articulately about the material. When we were casting the movie, there were a few actors who said they'd do it if they could play his part. But he happily held strong, because I can't imagine anyone doing it as well as he did. But we were nervous in the beginning, but quickly relaxed.
Yeah, I just read something before I came that Joel, you're known as like the machine in Hollywood.
The Machine?
The Machine, yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it was a compliment. And one of your co-stars, I think she said that you were. What
Probably
did she
means
say?
I'm very cold and robotic.
No, I'm trying to remember the quote. She said, "I'm still thrown by that T-shirt." You were bliss on a stick, she said.
Bliss on a stick.
Yeah.
I think that was. Yeah. I'm not going to name names.
So, Jason, you said that Jason Bateman wasn't your first choice. Who were some of the people who you thought about, not necessarily contacted, but just who did you think about for that role?
We looked at a couple of people. Joel Kinnaman was one guy we looked at. There was a handful of people. I actually had two different templates for the character. One was more the kind of collegiate football jock guy who lived by his brawn rather than his wits. But I found it a less interesting version of the character than Jason's version of the character, which is someone who I feel can be a more subversive human being by using intelligence to undermine other people. And imagine that guy at school who's just the funniest guy in school and can talk his way into or out of any situation. And to me, that was more exciting than having some big beefcake who was going to be able to kind of knock Gordo sideways.
We sent it to Ethan. Remember Ethan Hawke?
Yes.
We flirted with him a long time, and he loved the script, but didn't want to play Jason's part. He wanted to play Gordo. He wanted to play Joel's part.
Yeah,
we said no.
And I had Jason Bateman lined up. Literally, I was joking in Chicago the other night that people often think that if you're an actor and you decide you want to direct, that suddenly all these people just open their checkbooks and they say, like, whatever it is, I'm happy to work with you. And it's not true. And I had courted the idea of putting Jason in this film, and we had a different financier at that time that didn't work out and got all a bit clunky. And so the movie did what a lot of movies do. It's they almost happen and then they go away, and it takes you another year to rebuild the finance and whatever. And Jason and I parted ways, and I went off to do stuff, and he went and directed his own movie. In fact, he directed 2 movies. And then when it came around again, he contacted me, and he was like, "What's going on with that film?" And I was like, "Oh, we're just starting to get back into it." Like, are you still? I thought he'd become disinterested or was more fascinated with making movies, but he wanted to jump right in. And that's what you need, especially when you're directing a movie for the first time, is great partners, actors who are going to turn up on set and not, be lost in their trailer. And Jason, more than anyone, having directed a movie, just was so eager to watch me go through what he'd been through in a positive way.
The sound was amazing. It creates the suspense in the film, and I don't know much about how one does that. How did you accomplish that? Is it as simple as picking a really brilliant sound person and they just put it all together for you, or is it a lot of work?
It is. Sound people are so essential. They often say that good sound is more important than a good picture, and that people in an audience will put up with a bad picture before they'll put up with bad sound.
Especially in a genre movie.
Yeah, and take, and lack of sound is as important as sound is. And, so choosing when to have music, when not to have music, when to have sound, when not to have sound, when to have sounds and then start to take them away. And we had Julian Slater as our kind of everything sound, sound mixer, and he controlled everything, Foley and dialogue and everything. He, funnily enough, had just come off working on Mad Max, and so, Rebecca cutting an apple sounded like, ka-ching, ka-ching. I was like, all right, we're not in Mad Max anymore, just pull it back a little bit. But he was amazing, and his ability to understand tension was really great. And then also Danny Bensi and Saundra Jurian, who composed the movie, who had composed Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, and this recent documentary, which you've got to see, called The Wolf Pack. Were just excellent. I love their music, and it wasn't the typical genre score, but at the same time, everything about this movie, I wanted to feel like it had one foot in that world of the genre and one foot in another sort of zone, and they really helped me achieve both.
Well, I'm actually here from the Department of Fish and Game on behalf of the koi fish, because that wasn't okay.
It wasn't okay.
Oh, the dog, he got away. What about the koi?
Oh yeah, they're fake.
We didn't really kill any. We didn't kill any fish.
Someone once said to me, that they watched a film and it said at the end, no animals were harmed during the making of this movie, and the guy next to him turned to him and said, "What about catering? Chicken, beef, fish." We looked after the koi. We had a koi wrangler, and the dead koi are fake dead koi. We care for them.
Actually, my statement was...
They're on holidays right now. They're having a great time. They wrote me a postcard.
Oh, nice. Somewhere in the Bahamas. I was bullied as a child, so it's funny because I never thought about where my bully would end up. So it's kind of an interesting personal thing there. But also, I had a question. During the first office party scene where he's being introduced, there was a person in one of the couples that I swore was you. Looked just like you, and I kept finding myself to see was it him or not.
That's my brother.
Thank you. It's not me.
I have a
good
question
eyes.
for you. Do you think he's more handsome than me? Thank you.
Robin was
He
in,
is, by the way.
Robin was in room 237. Was that a reference to another movie?
Yes, it was. There's quite a few of them actually in there. If you care to look, a few little homages there. Yeah.
First off, I want to say I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
I like the fact that the reveal didn't come from Simon or Gordon as far as what happened. It came from Greg. Was that something that you guys had, I guess, worked on or decided that you were going to do in writing the script? Because usually at some point, Simon, I thought he was going to reveal to his wife, okay, I did this thing, but throughout the whole film, he never really truly admitted that he did this thing.
He never really admitted it. He never really apologized.
And
So
he
it
never
kind of felt like we needed to elicit that truth from somebody else. That guy, David Denman, is amazing, who played the chiropractor, who played Greg, because he had to come in and do one scene, which pretty much handed over all the exposition of the movie, while doing it in the context of a dramatic scene, hopefully not feeling like, here's all the information you need to know. And it's a really great scene. I think he's just such a great actor. And that was... thanks to Terry Taylor, who's the casting director at Blumhouse, casts all their movies, was so fantastic at... And I love this as an actor, because when I was young and I was trying to get a job, the idea of a casting director pushing forward names of people that you may not be familiar with as a director you really want your name out there, and that's what she was great at, just finding me really great actors who were better than just doing one scene, if you could put it that way, but were willing to come and do it. And a movie's only as great as its lowest common denominator, and I was so lucky.
Your concept of character development, I was really impressed with introducing Gordy so early in the movie. What was your thinking behind that as far as kind of splitting or taking a primary versus secondary versus tertiary character and kind of flipping it on its head? Where is Gordo a primary, secondary, or tertiary character, and how you played with that?
It's so weird. Often, I started actually thinking about the marketing of this movie as a kind of a way to decide how to begin the movie, and thinking that, do we make that scene where we introduce Gordo a lot more sort of background, almost like an insignificant moment, and yet knowing that the materials would be heavily weighted on this triangle kind of dynamic, that there was no point trying to hide that. At the same time, we didn't want to make it too significant. And in another breath, we didn't really want to leave the film linger for too long before we introduced the third party. Because I think we're so used to seeing these movies and seeing movies in general that, that I think someone told me recently, the original first act of the movie, as we used to watch them in the 50s, 60s, 70s, is now kind of given way to almost, injecting the audience straight deeper into the first act, so that you introduce the problems and the issues much quicker. So yeah, it is very quick, but that felt like the right thing to do.
Hi, I am actually a film editing student, and I gotta say that the editing scene where everything's kind of coming out with the video of the monkey and kind of like developing, as an editor, it's really hard to touch the audience, and like I was cringing, and I was kind of like, just the suspense kind of overwhelmed. So that's pretty much a great compliment for you as a director and also for your editor. Like, great job.
Well, thank you, and I'll give credit to Luke, my editor, for that. I'd worked with him before, and he'd done what I call repacking the lunchbox on something else that I'd written and directed. And by that I mean, he'd reordered certain events and changed the tempo of, a sequence that when I first watched it, I was like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. This is the previous film I made with him, a short film. But as it got to the end of, he said, just watch it a couple of times, you'll understand why. And he did that by just sort of artfully moving a little bit of the cutting back to the hospital room with Robin and Gordo, to kind of leave us hanging with the gifts with Simon, to then, keep both tensions alive. And it was a really great idea. And I think that editors are more than just people who push, buttons and turn dials, that they can also, as a producer, can be a very important creative part of the process, and a person who's able to give you a bit of subjectivity, take away some of your subjectivity late in the piece, and reintroduce that objective point of view.
First, thank you. Second, did it take long to come up with Gordo as the name?
No. I have to blame a little bit of my Australianness on this, and I have a DP, Eduardo Grau, who's from Barcelona, and he turned up and he said, you know what Gordo means in Spanish? It's fatty. And I hadn't really thought about that. Someone had mentioned to me much earlier, and I hadn't thought about it again. And I thought, well, do I change the name? And I thought, well, no, this movie's about the names we call each other, and it sort of felt appropriate. But if you go to Australia, everybody's name gets abbreviated or elongated by the letters O being added, or AZ, like Rob becomes Robbo. And I think there was a little bit of my Australianness sort of crept in there.
So I just want to say my birthday is coming up, and I feel like I don't want to open any gifts. And then, so I have two questions. One is, what other gifts have you given besides Tim's that blew him away? And then my second question is, so I've worked on a couple of short independent films, and I can't imagine the director, you being a director and also an actor in the same movie. How do you do that? Like, what were the, I guess, challenging things versus...
I didn't like I loved being a director. I had a great time. The days I liked the least were the ones where I had to do double duty. But, I had my handsome brother in the on set. He was a stunt coordinator. He played a character. He was my outside eye when I was directing, and he did some additional editing. So he's a bit of an all-over, sort of all-round film guy. I was lucky enough to have him there as an outside eye, which made it easier. But it definitely was a great challenge, and one where I think maybe if the next time I make a movie, unless I have a longer schedule, I think I'll just stick to one job and keep the tasks separate. As far as the gifts are concerned, today, leaving Dallas, there was a young female journalist who was driving home, and I guess she decided to open her gift while she was driving the car. And she worked at a particular cosmetics company, and the gift that we got for her was a little lipstick that came from her company. And it was the exact one that she was wearing, and she sent us a message saying when she opened it, she nearly had a car accident.
Yeah, I would have had a car accident if I opened this when I was driving too. Okay, so the movie is The Gift. I guess in summation here, can you guys talk about getting your product out in what is probably a very overcrowded marketplace, the challenges of that, and you know what people can do to spread the word?
Well, the challenge for this movie is that it's being released in the summer, because this is typically a movie that you wouldn't release in the summer. So we're counter-programming. We're competing with Mission Impossible. So I believe like we can overcome. But we did a movie actually with one of the executives from STX who used to be at Universal, a movie called The Purge. We also released in the summer, and The Purge was actually also a really little movie, and that worked out. That worked out well. So hopefully this will too. But anything that any of you can do, because we're really competing with all the huge tentpole movies,
Right.
Tom Cruise and Ant-Man and Marvel and all those movies. So I guess that's key to us. So thank you.
Yeah, go to
Appreciate it.
Facebook, go to the webpage, go to Twitter. I always say this to people: if you loved what you saw, just go nuts on social media. If you didn't, just don't go near social media for a couple of days. But the movie opens Susie, August 7th. So if you liked it, really spread the word, tell your friends, and thank Jason Blum and Joel Edgerton.
We
for
want to
coming out
show
here tonight.
that small movies can work year round. So
Yeah, right. So thank these guys for coming out.
Thank you very much.